Hey, Julie.
Hello, hello. Oh, is the terrible sound gone?
Yes.
Sorry, I've got it going for my phone again because I always forget which computer the camera works and the camera doesn't work, and so I picked the wrong one today, and waiting for the other one to boot up would just take too long. So we're on phone. But
Gotcha.
welcome to Monday Night Domains. How's it going?
It's going good. I was just, let me go ahead and we'll give people a chance to come in. Let me retweet the,
Yeah, everyone would love to retweet the space. We would love if you would do that. We're live on YouTube on Free Name, and then all of Dad's Twitter handles, I believe.
yeah, let me
Dad, I
go
like
ahead. I go to profile. Hold on. I'm just going to do this slowly.
that. Okay.
I go to then we go live with Restream. So I
Yep.
like it. And then I repost it. I quote it.
Quote it.
If you quote it, what does quoting mean in the world of posting, Julie?
It means that you, instead of just reposting with a little button, you add something to the content. So you make a little comment, and then your followers get to see it, and it does do better for the algorithm because it shows there's something to talk about and it increases engagement. Whenever I think about social media algorithms, I always think of that they're a company and they want people to use their thing. So if you're doing something that takes longer and uses their app and makes you on their app longer, then they promote that. So
Gotcha.
same
And
with
so tonight
Instagram.
I'm gonna put so I went ahead and hit quote instead of just repost. And then it lets me put stuff in. Julie, what's the current thinking, since you're our social media expert, on hashtags? First, our buddy Elon said they don't matter anymore, but I think some people still search by hashtags for content, don't they?
They absolutely search by hashtags. They may be leaning towards more of a event than like a subject, but either way, I mean, putting a hashtag in your tweet that puts in words about what you're saying, so then people search those words, your tweet pops up whether or not they want the hashtag for it or not. But I know that a lot of people, me included, use a hashtag for certain events going on. So for certain, like sports games, they have their own hashtag. A lot of people will do their own hashtags for weddings. If there's like a trend happening, that'll be followed by a hashtag. So I disagree with what Elon Musk says, which is not out of the ordinary for me. So yeah, I mean, and he does own X, so maybe that is correct on X, but anything else, it's not really. I don't
Yeah,
agree. I
I
know
think
that
he may have
depends on.
been speaking, yeah, just as to whether it would, like you say, up your tweet in the algorithm. That's what I'm not as interested in that as like if someone has a feed or something where they look for anything that says hashtag domains or hashtag domaining or something like that, then adding those hashtags will do.
I think what he might. I'm sorry, I'm moving around so much. I think what he might have been saying was because of the search feature on Twitter or on X, like it'll search all the words in a tweet, not just a hashtag. However, if I'm looking for something specific, I will go to the hashtag. I mean, whenever The Bachelor is on, I would go to the Bachelor hashtag and the Dancing with the Stars hashtag every single time and just see what the. It's a good way to group conversations because like you have these words like bachelor or like dancing that can be used for a bunch of different tweets, and if you just search that, then all of these tweets that may or may not be in the subject are going to pop up. Same with domain. You know, there's domain names. There's like your general domain, like what you rule over. Like there's different contexts for things. But if you want a certain like .com domains, okay, you're going to go to that hashtag. In my personal opinion, personal professional opinion.
Gotcha. Well, I went to LinkedIn Live. We actually look pretty good on LinkedIn Live, Julie.
Hey, we look good all the time. You act surprised.
That's a good point. That is an excellent point. Well, you look good all the time.
Aww. Thanks.
Let's
I got a new
see.
water bottle.
Julie, you asked me some questions this week about taxes. So
Oh, goodness.
I thought that we would do two things. How's this for exciting?
Y'all, we learned a lot this week.
Domains and tariffs and domains and taxes. Huh? Will that bring them in?
Well, let's start with one question I have.
Okay.
We all know what happened in the stock market this week. Did we see the domains have the same trend? Do domains follow the stock market? This was a good week to check it out.
That is a good question. And I would say naively, you could say no, but the truth is yes. We want our customers to have lots of money to buy our domains. We don't like it when they have less money, or there's more uncertainty about whether they're going to have more money in the future.
Yes.
So for the high-end domain market, there was even a post this week, whether, say, you had a pending deal. Say you agreed last week to sell a name for $45,000 to a company.
No,
All of a sudden, the market's down Thursday and Friday. They haven't funded escrow yet. Because again, you can agree to sell a name, but they need to pay. You need to deliver the name, and then that money needs to clear and get to your bank account. So that's
all
when
your ducks are in a row before you can count your chickens. All your chickens got to after they hatch.
So I think that now, that being said, if there's a complicated way to say that domains could benefit in some ways, in my opinion, it's been that for the last 20 years, it's been very easy to be a passive investor in the stock market and always make money.
Yeah.
And to that extent, why would you buy domain names when you can go buy Apple stock and you just sit there and every week you look and you make money and you can sell it anytime you want and it's liquid, you know? And so it's only been the last month where all of a sudden the price you pay for Apple stock is so high that people realize, it's way too high. So in that regard, could have some money seeking out other investments, but primarily I would say it hurts the uncertainty and the loss of money, liquid money, investable money is probably bad for domains.
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
And I only ask that question knowing it to be bad for domains because things are always going to change. I'm hoping it's a short-term thing. But if, the stock market is a longer term down, because people use their investments in their just like net equity, right? They list that whenever they're applying for like bank loans, all that stuff. Yes or no?
Yep.
Do they do the same thing with their domain portfolio? Can you list that as equity? And then B, because it doesn't have a set price, is that seen as high? Because obviously any stock you had is now going to be less valuable, they're going to be worth less. Does that translate to domains as well? Does that make any sense?
It does.
Or was that a question by a science major that made no sense?
But it does, because if you did fill out a financial statement and you owned a domain name, you're going to put down the domain, or you're going to put down your whole domain portfolio, and it's going to ask you for an estimated fair market value. Now with domains, it's kind of unclear.
Yeah.
With stocks, it's pretty easy. You just say, what's your stock worth right now? And then they'll say, send us a statement. So on one hand, they'll be able to more easily verify the value you have in stocks than the value you have in domains. If you were a company, a bank might say, well, we'll give you the value that you paid for your domains, your cost.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Which is still something. I mean,
yeah,
that doesn't go down just because the market crashed.
Right. And then at the same point, if you filled out just like a piece of real estate, if you just bought it, you may say, well, I just paid $200,000 for my house. But if it had been a couple years, then you say market value, and you'd go, oh yeah, I think houses are going for about 240 or 260, So I think that you have the ability to put a value on your names. Now, it's getting a little easier to educate bankers. I've even had to go in with a banker before and give them my whole list of domains, And again, I said, these are my costs, but we do have appraisals out there. We do have articles about domains selling for money. So it's gotten better.
Good.
So I think that the downside, like right today, did your domains go up or down in value?
Nothing.
You don't have to do what's called mark to market. What that means is, because there is a market for your stock, if anyone else got panicked and sold your stock for a low amount, the whole world's going to say your stock is worth that amount, even if you didn't sell today.
Ooh,
right?
I have questions too.
Yeah.
So, do you think because people like just the kind of people that invest in domains are probably the same kind of people that invest in the stock market? Have you seen people that lost money in the stock market that are trying to sell their domains for a lower price to make up for the financial difference? Slash, do you think you were going to see that if the stock market continues this trend?
It depends if they were borrowing money to invest in the stock market.
Ooh, okay.
That's
So
where
I
it
don't think
gets that's where it gets dangerous. And then they might say, like this morning, or the last 24 hours for crypto was crazy. Crypto dropped 20% yesterday on a Sunday while everyone was out at the park. Then it dropped 20% more this morning overnight while everyone was sleeping. And then at 7 this morning, all of a sudden it came back. So it was going bing, bang, boom, bang, bang, boom. In domains, we have illiquid assets that we think are worth a lot of money, but we can't sell them right now except for their wholesale price. That really doesn't change on a day like today.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, on one hand, small businesses, the customers for your domain name could still say, we need to start a new internet marketing plan. We need to start a new business. We need a domain name today. And I think what you do see in domaining is when people get nervous about we're going to go into a recession, they'll say this, I want to sell my names now.
Well, that's always great for the buyer, never good for the seller.
Right. And there's no real way to do it. And whether or not the seller wants to sell their names makes no difference to the buyer. So
unless they drop that price.
Right, but then they also have to find the buyer.
Right.
And that's what we don't have in the domain market. If you said today, I'm going to get, like I said, I'm going to get out of domaining. I'm ready to sell my names. One of the few, I could just put them all up for sale at zero. I could put them all up for auction with a zero reserve, meaning whoever bids on each name is going to get it. Mm-hmm. And I could pick a platform that after 7 days, at the very end of the auction, on some names, more than one person might want it for $20, and then they might bid 30 or 60 or 70 or 80, and maybe 100 and maybe 200 and maybe 300. But I would be hoping that those people were there that day, and I would be hoping that they found my name.
Right.
But it's not like you can go to the poker window at a casino and cash in your chips. And so you have to remember that when you're buying a name, is you are committing money that, this is what we talked about last week, buying names that have established wholesale value, you do have kind of a backdoor.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
Like say you and I had all the money in the world and we were looking at names and we said, let's buy fashionmagazine.com.
Good name, great name.
Now we may think that it's got a value of $5,000 to $6,000 always, but we may have to pay $12,000 to buy it. But we'd at least know that we could probably sell it for $5,000 to $6,000 in 30 days if we had to. Yeah. So you do have some components of liquid value. But like you said early, Julie, what happens on a day like today? Those people that may have paid 5 to 6 wholesale for this, they're going to say, well, we'll just do 4 to 5 because, the stock market's down.
Money, yeah.
So in general, yes, it's good.
Well, I wonder if that's something, because I think it's kind of what we've been doing not really, but it's something that's something to talk about is like constant lead generation on your names. Because we all can talk about buying and selling. We don't really talk about the process between those two things. So I wonder if there's a way to kind of do constant lead generation, because you may want to hold on to a name for a year and see what you can really do with it, because you don't have to pay a renewal for a year. Even if it's $1 million name, you don't want to hold on to it for 5 years, see what you can do with it, really get that best price, because $30 renewal isn't much for a $5 million name. But you have days like today where it's like, oh no, I need to sell now. So I think there's a level of domain that we might need to start doing, like constant lead generation.
So the other thing that's a real catch-22, a real conundrum, is that right now the domains that are easiest to sell would be like .ai domains. Those are
Yeah.
hot. Everybody
Yeah.
wants them. They see things where they're selling for 10 and 20 and 30 and 40,000. And that's to other investors. So if you owned a one word name, if you own even something like, if you own like bear.ai, that could go for 30,000 to another domain investor.
Easy.
But at the same point, when there's uncertainty, the part of that, let me see if I can say it right. The part of that domain name that's easy to sell because it's hot, that gets hit on days like today. Because those fast money people are also going to be thinking, hey, I can buy NVIDIA or Apple stock. It's down 30% today. I might as well go do that. So because they're dealing with
psychology involved.
What's that?
There's some psychology here. Like, what kind of people do we think lost money in the market that would be willing, who would be willing to risk it on the lower cost stocks right now?
And here's the important lesson for a young person like yourself. If you've invested in stocks today, or if you invested in crypto, you really, really want your stocks to come back in value. And you really, really want your crypto to come back in value. But one of the early lessons I learned is that bottoms, meaning when things have reached their low, that's determined over time. And what I mean by that is everyone thought their stock or their crypto was worth something. And this weekend, they got a rude awakening that it could go down 30 to 40 to 50%.
It could do it again.
And now when it goes down 30 or 40, 50% and it starts to come back, you've got to work through all the people who said, man, if it just comes back 10%, I'm going to sell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they're selling, and then it goes down again. And so you have to wait for time for those people to get courageous again, for things to change in a company, in the domain space, a new trend to take over. In the crypto space, someone has to actually be delivering on their game plan for their crypto, not just promising that they're going to deliver. You know what I mean?
I think
that takes time. So yes, the thing to do now, in my opinion, if you're a domain investor, is to accurately assess how much money you need for the next 6 months of your renewals. Accurately assess if you can afford to renew those names. Like I've decided I'm going to sell about a third of or I'm going to not renew about a third of my names. And so I need to start trying to sell those names now, not when their renewal comes up. And I'm like, oh, I want to sell it now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have to raise money from partners, I'm not encouraging anyone to borrow money on domain names. But I am saying if you need to have the liquidity to make sure you can pay your renewals, to give yourself the time to sell the names, finding leads, emailing them, telling your story. Because remember, you're going to have to email 1,000 people maybe to get 20 that are interested.
Yeah.
Those 20 that are interested aren't interested unless it's their price. So then you got to hope there's 3 of them that might pay your price. And then you got to hope that their life at this time has them in a mood to pay your price.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that takes a while. What's that?
I wonder if this is kind of, well, I don't wonder. This is a really great example of people, how we always say, don't invest more than you can afford to lose, like with domains. People who can afford to hang on to their names right now and aren't having to be desperate and selling for a lower price are really going to luck out here. And I mean, that's where the smart.
And you may even find it a time to maybe send an inquiry on a name that you've been after for a long time. I see True Domains in our comments says he bought armpits.com. This could have been armpits.com.
Solid name. Solid name there.
So, and why is it a solid name?
Because it's one word. It's a oneword.com.
And it elicits a reaction.
And it's funny. It's just funny. It's one that billionaires with all the money in the world to spend would love to buy for.
And there are products that deal with armpits.
Yeah, I know about that. I work there. That's right.
And that's right. You do know about that. And those products are probably more difficult to talk about person to person. You may want to buy those products on the internet.
And it's one of those products that isn't, it's like you can't sell a Louis Vuitton bag on armpit stock. That's not going to work.
Right.
But it's one of those products, it's not super luxurious. It's not, it is taboo to talk about deodorant in general. So it's kind of one of those things that accepting that it's funny and putting it on armpits.com is going to do really well for you and people can afford a job. I don't know. I like that. I like that.
So say you are after a name and you inquired 5 months ago and the person said, I'm never selling or it's worth a bunch of money. This may be a time to revisit because you don't know if they had a lot of money in crypto. So again, it takes capital. If you're in domaining to create money, that's one of the big lures of domaining. So I can buy a name today for $10 to $100 and I can potentially sell it for $2,000 to $5,000. Whether you do that today depends on how good you are at selling names or picking and what's called front running, really, what people are going to want tomorrow. The problem with that is you spend all your time guessing what people are going to want tomorrow so much that you buy 200 lottery tickets. And then if you're right once, all that does is pay for all the guesses you had about what people might want tomorrow. You see what I mean? So you have to be
people who, like, if you're one of the domainers that likes to buy the lower cost domains and hoping to flip it, it's the same kind of odds as email marketing where you have to buy 1,000 names to sell to, kind of deal, which is a little spooky. Oh, you froze. I hope I didn't interrupt you. You froze, and so I thought you were done. Can you guys see Dad, or am I frozen? I agree. Dad, am I frozen or is Dad frozen? That's the question. Hey, eSport. Take a moment, look through the comments. Oh, take another moment. Hold please. Oh, Dad's gone. Okay, well. Oh, I see. Dad kicked the power cord on his computer. He'll be back in a second. Or I think honestly we're about time. So more than SEO, we'll get your question next week. I'll have it written down in the calendar. But until then, have a great week and have